All right, good morning, everyone. My name is Joaquin Esquivel, Chair of the State Water Sources Control Board. Today is Wednesday, February 18th. It is 9 a.m., and I'd like to call this meeting to order. Begin by introducing my fellow board colleagues. Joining me this morning is Vice Chair Doreen Diadamo, Board Member Sean McGuire, Board Member Laurel Firestone, and Board Member Nicole Morgan. We're also joined this morning by our Executive Director, Eric Oppenheimer, our two Chief Deputies, Karen Mogus and Eric Ekdahl, our Chief Counsel, Michael Loffer. Our Clerk of the Board is Courtney Tyler, and assisting her this morning is Margie Argel and Elizabeth Carrillo. This is a hybrid meeting, so we have both in-person and web components. If you're viewing us through our traditional webcast, it is either on the Cal EPA website or the YouTube Live website. But if you need to speak on any of today's one item, you need to be on the Zoom platform. In order to do so, there is a link at the top of the agenda and instructions to do so. But if you are having any challenges, please do just email the clerk of the board at board.clerk@waterboards.ca.gov, and she can help get you onto the platform. Once you are, camera will be off, and you'll be on mute until it is your turn to speak on the item you've indicated. For everyone here in the room, good morning. Good to see you all. We're here in the Sacramento, California Environmental Protection Agency building. A few quick announcements for us. Please do observe the exits. If we happen to have an emergency, we'll calmly file out to Cesar Chavez Plaza and await further direction. Also, if you intend on commenting on today's item, there is a QR code and a laptop at the side of the room to sign up. If you're having any challenges, though, please do just speak to the clerk of the board. And with that, we can get on with today's meeting. We are actually beginning today's meeting with a Superior Accomplishment Award. I'd like to call up Brian Elder in order to present.
All right. It's on. Okay. Good morning, board members. Today I want to present a Team Sustained Superior Accomplishment Award to 3 staff, and I'll have them come up here. These are 3 staff in the Office of Enforcement, Jamie Steele, German Myers, and Aaron Mustaine. If you can go ahead and come up here, please. Again, I'm Brian Elder. I'm a supervising water resource control engineer in the Office of Enforcement, and I manage the staff. Just to set the stage here, in 2014, US EPA set inspection targets for our wastewater collection systems at about 5% of our total wastewater collection system universe. This is part of the Section 106 grant funding. And based on this program, this represents about 65 inspections per year. These inspections are highly detailed program and field audits, often taking months to complete, coordinate, and execute. Under our former director, there was a push within the Office of Enforcement to develop our auditing skills, support the 9 regional boards, and build relationships with not only US EPA, but the regulated community and our regional board partners. We made a lot of attempts and had quite a bit of success in improving this program and how we do those audits, and these staff are a representation of some of those that were involved in that. The Special Investigations Unit and the Office of Enforcement Specialists took on the bulk of these audits for the entirety of the state and developed a robust inspection program over the next 10 years. In 2023, in response to US EPA's State Review Framework report, which identified our inspection program as a deficiency, I started working with US EPA to develop an alternative compliance monitoring strategy to meet EPA's stringent inspection targets. With the help of the staff here, we developed a targeted prioritization scheme that ultimately was accepted by EPA, which was a major milestone. This new strategy set a target of 25 audits per year. Together, we redesigned how these audits, how we audit these systems. We incorporated efficiencies and off-ramps for enforcement, and we further incorporated environmental justice into these audits, piloting 18 inspections focused on collection systems serving our most pollution-burdened communities. Some of the examples include Guadalupe, Pajaro, Blythe, and National City over the last couple of years. As a result of these efforts, we met inspection targets for the first time last fiscal year with 37 inspections, 16 by the staff here alone. This was acknowledged actually by leadership in US EPA at the joint MCC and DMC last year. So I'd like for all of you to join me in congratulating Jamie, German, and Aaron on their hard work in this area. Their work is a demonstration of staff across the water boards that are tasked daily with doing more with less resources, and is a testament to their ingenuity and creativity in exceeding expectations. I'm proud to have brought these staff into the fold and look forward to what they continue to contribute to agency priorities and the environment we're here to protect. Got German Myers, Jamie Steele, and Aaron Mustaine. All right.
Thank you, Mr. Elder. Really appreciate you elevating the team here and for the team's work. I think folks most not know, but we're actually by and large firewalled from enforcement. And so the opportunity to really actually hear about the work that you've been doing, the opportunity to celebrate you here in front of everyone is just really appreciated. Really appreciate the great work that's gone on and the focus on really thinking of pollution burdened communities and creating an even playing field for all of our wastewater systems out there. So much thanks. And let's get a photo in. Thank you again, and thanks everyone for that space and time to be able to really thank and acknowledge the folks that actually do the majority, all the work here really in our organization. So thank you. All right, that will now bring us to public forum. And I know we do have a handful of public forum commenters. I will just note, I believe a few of the commenters have noted that they wish to comment on the Bay Delta plan. Officially, the comment period has currently closed, so folks are free to say what they would like to the board here at public forum, but they will not be entered into the official record. There will be an additional public comment period as we come back out with the next draft. So do know that there will be further opportunity to publicly engage on the Bay Delta plan, but any comments this morning won't be part of that official record. That being said, I'd like to first call up Bob Gore.
Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, and board members. I would take this brief opportunity to remind everyone there are two windows of opportunity that have now opened for the Water Board to lead Water World in an ongoing and innovative funding conversation. To paraphrase Spider-Man, with great stress comes great opportunity. I spent some time last week with the legislative analyst and the Senate budget chair, and our fiscal straits are enduring and dire. And the legislative analyst has opined, this is one of the windows, that the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund is, this is a quote, legally flexible enough to be used for health and human services issues. And you're all aware that Medi-Cal and SNAP face an immediate $6 billion deficit. So there is a need to work together and collaborate and educate our 120 friends that water funding, water infrastructure, drinking water, where we've already lost 1/3, not that it was an entitlement, but 1/3 of what we were accustomed to in drinking water funding, that water is a basic human need, and it deserves a place in that pantheon. And so we should work together with GGRF and Proposition 4 in mind, because since I get engaged in fiscal issues, it's also become kind of an offset slush fund, if you will, and we're in some peril. And in times like these, with all due respect to other people seeking funding, you have to step up and re-educate, especially in urban legislature, where water is important. The second opportunity is March 5th, when we start the fee payers workshops again. And that's a forum. It's a built-in venue. And we appreciate the board members' participation and ongoing interest, but we could start this conversation there and talk about education and how to remind everyone involved that we need to coordinate funding, that funding properly involves the general fund and some other dedicated issues and funding sources. So I hope the board leads and convenes some sort of ongoing funding conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gore. Thank you for being a thought partner with the board here. I appreciate that flag and suggestion. I know it's weighed on our minds as a board and not lost on us, to your point, that the federal state revolving fund capitalization grants have continued to decline. We have challenges with the GGRF and a need and growing need when it comes to water infrastructure. Since I became chair, we've been fortunate to be able to invest nearly $13 billion here within the state of California, and agree that it's important to remind folks that all of that work is continues to be ongoing, and there are threats to it. So just appreciate the comment, and I think there is work to follow up on.
We'll collaborate. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next I would like to call up, and now I believe these are folks that are on the virtual platform, Dave Warner, be followed by Martin Gothberg, Julianne Frizzell, Barry Nelson, and then our last commenter will be Gary Bobker. Mr. Warner, good morning. Good to see you.
Good morning. Thank you. This in regards, I'm one of the ones, this is in regards to your upcoming Phase 1 Bay Delta Plan decision, and I appreciate your clarification about this comment not going in the official record. It's been pointed out to me what a difficult political situation you're in. Governor Newsom appointed you, and he wants you to approve the voluntary agreements. There's some chance he might be our next president. On the flip side, your scientific analysis provides little support for the VAs. It seems like you've been set up. In the negotiations for the VAs, it was Governor Newsom's appointees and the water managers in the room, no one defending the science. The result isn't surprising: little water for the rivers, relaxation of a number of safeguards, and heavy reliance on risky assumptions. But I'd like to point out an interesting situation on the Tuolumne, which is certainly one of the hardest hit rivers from a diversions perspective. From your Appendix L of your 2016 SED, you should already know that the SFPUC can easily afford the flow requirements of the Bay Delta Plan, especially now as the regional water system demand has declined over the last 10 years. You also know that they get 85% of their supply from the Tuolumne, and that they assume they would be responsible for 51.7% of the flows. This in itself is pretty remarkable, as they're responsible for only about 20% of the diversions from the Tuolumne, and their water rights are junior or behind those of the other diverters, the Turlock and Modesto irrigation districts, who take 80% of the diversions. If TID and MID had senior water rights and combined to take 80% of the diversions, but they're only responsible for 48.3% of the Bay Delta Plan required flows, that means the impact of the Bay Delta Plan to TID and MID is pretty modest. And to try to make this a little bit clearer, so in a drought, the SFPUC loses its water rights first, but as you know, they have an acceptable amount of storage, and per your Appendix L, they can easily afford more than half of the required Bay Delta Plan flows. TID and MID, even with the Bay Delta Plan, they have it pretty good. They have senior water rights to the SFPUC and are responsible for 80% of the diversions, as I mentioned, but less than half of the flows. But of course, they're going to argue that they don't want to give up the water, just like the SFPUC. The politicians listen to them and without understanding the reality on the ground or in the water, so to say. So I hope you'll use this example of the Tuolumne River situation with its 3 diverters, how one diverter is taking a big hit and can afford it, and while the other 2 diverters are taking only modest hits, for you to say that the Bay Delta Plan is a fair and reasonable solution for the co-equal goals obligation. And lastly, referring to Professor Moyle's research on Delta smelt, perhaps the canary in the coal mine, I think you know that they've not been seen in the Delta now for 8 years and counting. Thanks for listening to me.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Warner. Next, I'd like to call up Martin Gothberg, then Julianne Frizzell.
Good morning, board members, and congratulations to the audit staff on their award, Jamie, Sturman, Aaron. The public loves to hear that sort of thing. So I'm Martin Gothberg, and I spoke on the last day of the recent Phase 2 hearings in support of the Bay Delta Plan. So I'll keep this short, emphasize a couple of points I was unable to make due to time, and I understand this is not part of the record, as you mentioned, Chair. So the San Francisco Bay Delta is the largest estuary on the west coast of the Americas and arguably the most endangered ecosystem. We have starved our rivers of flow over the many decades, primarily benefiting agriculture, but also industry and households that use, of course, that remaining 20%. By starving our rivers and hoarding water behind dams, we've created a system of always acting as if we were in a drought, only to dump massive amounts of water during wet years. The Bay Delta Plan will fix that. I look forward to telling more about that, as it will force water management and conservation efforts better than the water management plans required of TID and MID every 5 years. Be mindful of what you want your legacy to be. You truly have a golden opportunity to require implementation of flows necessary to bring back our salmon-based ecosystem. Thank you all for your time and effort.
Thank you, Mr. Gothberg. Next, I'd like to call up Julianne Frizzell, be followed then by Barry Nelson, Gary Bobker, and then Regina Chicazola.
Hi, I'm Julianne Frizzell. I was not able to speak at the recent Phase 2 hearings. I wish now to express my strong support for the Bay Delta Water Control Plan. The plan is based on good scientific analysis and facts, and it requires viable minimum flow water flows to support the salmon populations, healthy rivers, and Bay Delta environment. Because the plan has not been implemented, the river systems that feed the Delta and the Bay Delta system are suffering. The populations of fish and wildlife have plummeted. There are toxic algae blooms in the Bay Delta and invasive species clogging waterways. The fisheries are in collapse. These biological disasters would not be occurring if there was adequate flow in our rivers and into the Delta. The watershed rivers nurture the Bay Delta, and the Delta nurtures the Bay and all of us and our environment. The voluntary agreements were put together hastily for political reasons. The science shows that the VA flows minimums do not provide enough cold water, fast-flowing water to support viable native fish populations. Rivers in the Bay Delta environment. No fishing, conservation, tribal, or environmental justice groups support the The board should include strong, science-based protections that require increased flows of at least 55% in our CR rivers in most years and a minimum of 45% in all years. I am a landscape architect. One of the key skills of being an LA is to design efficient irrigation systems. California agriculture uses about 80% of the clean water in our state. There is plenty of room for farmers to improve the efficiency of their irrigation systems and grow healthy crops and trees using far less water than they currently use. Stopping wasteful practices will make it possible for California to meet the water needs of all users in the state and increase flows in our rivers to allow the ecosystems to thrive. The board has the opportunity to do what is right for the long-term health of our rivers and the Bay Delta system and all the citizens of the Bay Area who depend on a healthy environment. The VA will not meet the Water Board's revised water quality objectives and will not provide reasonable protections for fish, wildlife, and the Bay Delta environment. Please do not support the VAs. Please support the Bay Delta Quality Control Plan, and thank you for letting me speak. And I am sorry I'm in my office and for the phone interruption. Thank you.
No, sorry in the least, and thank you, Ms. Frizzell. Appreciate your comments this morning. Next, I'd like to call up Barry Nelson.
Thank you, Chair Esquivel. Barry Nelson, Golden State Salmon Association. I appreciate your admonition that your record is closed, the comment period is closed. The reason I'm here today is because of developments since your deadline is closed. You may recall that in my testimony before you in the Bay Delta Plan workshop in January, I projected a number of obstacles that I said the board would likely encounter if you approved the VAs. Recent events have confirmed those obstacles, and they've actually confirmed them before you've adopted, just within a couple of weeks of your workshop closing. I'd like to briefly refer to 6 documents. I'll talk fast. There's a lot. First, on February 5th, Westlands Water District wrote a letter requesting that the board waive a key part of D1641, the Port Costa X2 requirement. February 9th, 4 Central Valley House members, clearly at Westland's request, urged Governor Newsom to waive that same requirement. Then Westlands issued a statement in support of that request. February 17th, the Coalition for a Sustainable Delta wrote a letter to Governor Newsom with that same rollback request. Next, in February, a new set of recommendations was released by Sac Valley Water Interests supporting more ESA rollbacks and what sounded like a rollback request regarding D1641. And finally, the Bureau submitted a comment letter to you on the Bay Delta Plan in which they deny that they have the authority or obligation to implement the Bay Delta Plan. They also question the board's authority to require accounting to verify that claimed VA habitat restoration benefits are real. I'd like to observe 4 things about those letters. First is, I suggested we're likely to see more federal rollbacks. Requests for those rollbacks have begun within 3 weeks, within a couple of weeks of your workshop. And these requests are coming from the rollback, from the VA parties themselves. I will point out that as these rollbacks continue, it's going to be difficult for the board to establish an accurate project description and analysis of the VAs because that baseline keeps getting cut. Second, as that baseline gets cut, obviously the water produced by the VA package would be reduced. And at this point, it's pretty clear that between rollbacks and proposed new projects, the VA parties are proposing to take more water out of the VA, out of the Bay Delta system than they're proposing to put back into the Bay Delta system. That's even if the new water in the VAs is real, which we question. So the current Bay Delta plan update would make the Bay Delta sicker than it is today. Third, these documents are being distributed after the state board's workshop was concluded. We all heard the water users' testimony at the workshops. They did not present scientists to testify about the lack of foundation for D1641 and X2 and ask you to carefully update the Bay Delta plan. There are 2 reasons they didn't do that. First, they don't have a scientific case. Second, they didn't testify in that way and before you because they don't want to admit before the board that they're calling for the regulatory baseline to be slashed. At the same time, they're calling for you to approve the VAs to add more water to that shrinking baseline. This is a coordinated, cynical political play, and the clue is in the first line of 2 of these letters written to the governor, not to you, not to the water board. Fourth, I said that the Bureau of Reclamation would prove not to be a reliable partner in the VAs. In the last month, they wrote you to question your authority to regulate them. They question your authority to require accounting to verify that VA habitat benefits are real. And in that letter, the Bureau again did not state their support for the VAs. And again, they did not pledge to raise the $740 million in new federal funding that the VAs require. These problems are going to become more and more obvious over time. We urge you to deal with them now before you adopt the updated plan. And I have 4 quick recommendations. Deny the request to cut D1641. Reject the VA approach. Write to the Bureau and ask them, as I said 3 weeks ago, ask them specific questions, including their commitment to raise the $740 million in new federal funds and questions about their plans for more ESA rollbacks. Next, analyze Action 5 fully and require makeup water for that rollback before you adopt the plan. More rollbacks are coming, so you should begin that process now. Actually, a 5th point, and that is develop the backstop more fully, including funding and habitat milestones. You're going to need that backstop. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Nelson. Appreciate your comments. There's a lot I would like to try to respond. This is public forum and want to be respectful to our board members, but appreciate the summary of the timeline of letters, very closely tracking for sure those letters. Glad it is wet out and we are seeing now a cessation of the release of supplemental project water. So the concerns that were written in those letters may have abated a bit, but the issues certainly haven't. So appreciate that, Mr. Nelson. Next, I'd like to call up Gary Bobker.
Great. Can you hear me?
We can. Thank you. Good morning. Good to see you.
Great. Good to see you, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. I'm Gary Bobker. I'm the program director at Friends of the River. Like Barry, I want to comment on the recent letters to the governor regarding the request to reverse implementation of the X2 standard. And so my comments are not really about the update of the Bay Delta plan. They're about the implementation of the current plan and the implications of those current letters, on the process of implementing the update. So let me start with the letters themselves. They request the governor to direct a reexamination and reversal of the commitments in the Bay Delta plan to implement the Port Chicago standard and others. They make arguments about how that standard is based on an outmoded conceptual model of the ecosystem and how the standard doesn't match current hydrology with the regulation. There's a fundamental misunderstanding of the standard themselves in all of these letters. First of all, the outflow standard, the X2 standard, is not based on some theoretical model. It's actually based on a set of persistent, strong, significantly significant, and meaningful relationships between flow and numerous aquatic organisms with diverse life histories that occur in different spatial and temporal locations and at different trophic levels. And that relationship is real, as the current, the current process to update the Bay Delta plan has shown again and again and again. Also, the X2 standard, which relies on hydrological conditions in the antecedent month, is much more sensitive than many of the standards that that are much more sort of geared to a water year type. But if people are concerned about potential disconnection between conditions in one month and the following, then there's a great solution for that, and that's called the unimpaired flows approach, which is instantaneous in its response to hydrological conditions. And I'm sure that the signatories to those letters would all support that instead. The second point I want to make is really kind of just maybe pounding in a few points that Barry made, and that is that there's this assumption that the voluntary agreements allow the board and the state of California to work collaboratively with all of these parties, and it sort of assumes good faith and collaborative efforts that I think really don't exist. There's very strong evidence from not just from the recent letters, but from other statements that the voluntary agreement parties are going to work continually to erode the regulatory baseline by attacking D1641 commitments. They are almost certainly going to challenge the regulatory backstop if and when the board adopts that approach when it issues the final update. You are not playing with folks who really want you to succeed. And, to quote, since we're quoting comic book characters today, to quote Little Orphan Annie, leaping lizards. That's who you're dealing with. Kidding aside, I think that the board is acting on some assumptions that really are just not based on reality. And at the end of the day, you're building a house built of air, and you're going to be grasping at air. And you really need to re-examine some of your basic assumptions about the political dynamic here and what's likely to happen once you adopt a final decision. And so, again, I urge you to turn to the strong record that supports adopting strong new unimpaired flow standards when you finally turn to that decision. Thank you.
Thank you as well, Mr. Bob Kerr. I'd like to call up Regina Chicazola.
Good morning. This is Regina Chicazola with Save California Salmon. I am not going to talk about the Bay Delta Plan, but some of the things I'm going to talk about do touch on it. But I would like to state that I agree with the people before me as far as my doubts as who can be good partners and trust it. And part of that, I think, goes to my next subject. As you know, throughout the Bay Delta Plan process, and because the board has decided not to deal with this as part of the process, it's not part of the process. But we've brought up many times that the Trinity River is in grave danger right now, and the reason why is because it is managed through the federal government. The state and regional boards have done very little for the Trinity River. It's TMD. It doesn't have TMDLs. It does have 303D listings, but there are no real actions. There are like some water quality standards for temperatures, but they're not enforced. They're very 20 years old. The biological opinion is 30 years old, I think. Carryover storage has almost no protection. So there are a lot of issues here where we need the state board to get more involved. And I think in the past, there's been a reliance on that the tribes in the Klamath and Trinity Rivers do have tribal fishing and water rights and have established them through the court systems. But I could say that expecting the federal government to support or honor those rights in any way right now would be ridiculous, completely ridiculous. And so there are options and options that you have taken in the Sacramento River to make sure water can stay in the Trinity River. And I'm asking the board to start a process and to figure out what those options are. There could be an in-streams flow plan. There could be we could have in-streams flow studied. We can have some water rights code apply. We can look at carryover storage protections. We can look at TMDL standards and actually makes a plan to hit those standards when it comes to temperature listings. And I'm saying this is a critical need, and there's a few reasons why this is a critical need. First of all, as I'm sure you're aware, there's been kind of a light ceasefire and a lot of case law that helps us out on the Klamath River as the Klamath Dam renewal process has gone through. With the new really hardcore attack on the Endangered Species Act, I think that we can plan for none of that ceasefire to continue to exist. And recently, there was a solicitor's opinion that came from the Trump administration that said California has no right to have any water in the Klamath River at all. So to make that clear, it's the federal government's position, even though it's counter to all case law over 20 years or 30 years, that they have the right to completely dewater the Klamath River. And the state of California has nothing in place to protect the Klamath River. I mean, maybe some like kind of vague things, but for a long time, there hasn't been a focus on the Klamath or Trinity River coming from this board. I think that needs to change. This board put a lot of effort there's been a focus on the 401 certification for the Klamath River Dam removal, and we really appreciate that. But other than that, there's nothing to protect in-stream flows at all. And we've actually been completely relying on the Trinity River to provide extra water to stop fish kills over recent years, but there's nothing in law to protect that except for some federal decision notices and EISs. And being that we know that the Trump administration's viewpoint is that the ESA doesn't apply to the Klamath River anymore because ultimately Oregon farmers have first right to all of the water in the watershed. There needs to be some action by this board because I think we're going to see that they have that same view of the Trinity River when the biological opinion comes out. And there are things that this board can do to protect these two river systems, and there is a critical need. During the Bay Delta Plan hearings, and again, this is not a specific comment on that, it was alluded to that in the past we've counted on the Endangered Species Act at times to protect flows, and it was nowhere near enough. Well, the same is true on the Klamath River and on the Trinity Rivers. And tribal rights have helped a little with protecting those flows and protecting those fish, but we've seen a lot of fish kills. We've seen a lot of water quality standards be violated. And then we've seen, some emergency flows come almost too late that have helped with massive crises not happening over the last 20 years. I think we can expect that action to no longer happen. And I think, we've seen over and over again that administrations change. And this is maybe one of the first administrations we've seen that's decided that they can be completely lawless and ignore any federal protections and laws. But the amount of deregulation, which has been mentioned, is extreme. The ESA has been gutted, NEPA has been gutted, now 401 certifications are being gutted. So I'm asking this board to think about how we move forward with protections for the Trinity River flows and what kind of planning we need to do to protect the Klamath flows in the long term. Because just saying that California has no right to this water and we can dry up our second largest water river system whenever we get a new president is not something I think this board should stand for. So with that, I think that's probably my time. But I want to thank you so much. And I just encourage you to be strong in fighting back against the Trump administration's deregulation.
Good to see you and really appreciate those comments this morning. Ms. Chickaszola, when it comes to the Trinity, and I know I've heard additional concerns on the Klamath for sure, would love to just meet and love to maybe set up some time. So I'll reach out and like to follow up on some of your points. So thank you. All right, looking to my clerk, if there's any additional commenters, appreciate everyone that addressed the board this morning during public forum. That now brings us to our first item of board business, which is consideration of the board meeting minutes from the February 3rd and 4th board meeting. Looking to my fellow board colleagues if there's any adjustment, or I think we're ready for a motion.
I'll move to adopt. Second.
Thank you both. Ms. Tyler, can you please call roll call vote?
Board Member Firestone,
Aye.
Vice Chair Diadamo,
Aye.
Board Member Morgan,
Abstain.
and Board Member McGuire,
Aye.
Chair Esquivel.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you as well. Board meeting minutes are adopted. Quick, and I should have noted probably just at the top, for those that hadn't noticed, we are postponing item number 3 until I believe the next board meeting. So we'll get that on here quickly. But we'll now move on to item number 2, which is an item from the Division of Financial Assistance regarding the 2026 series Clean Water State Revolving Fund refunding bonds. An apt topic given our public forum comment for Mr. Gore. Good morning. Good to see you all.
All right, good morning. Well, my name is Josh Zees. I'm an Assistant Deputy Director in the Division of Financial Assistance. With me today is my colleague Mike Downey, also an Assistant Deputy Director in DFA, and then Stefan Spitch with the Office of Chief Counsel. So today we're going to be presenting on a proposal for the sale of Clean Water State Revolving Fund refunding bonds, which would redeem or effectively refinance the 2016 Clean Water SRF bonds. Next slide, please. So in this presentation, we'll go over some background on the Clean Water SRF and its leveraging program. We'll review some refunding bond analysis provided to us by the State Water Board's financial advisor. We'll go over the bond documents being considered for this transaction, the team that's going to facilitate this transaction, and then the proposed schedule. Next slide, please. So we wanted to take the opportunity just to remind everyone how the Clean Water SRF works. So like a bank, the Clean Water SRF is a fund managed by the State Water Board where federal capitalization derived from grants from US EPA combined with state match is deposited into the Clean Water SRF. Prior sources of state match have included California general obligation bonds, general fund, and local match. But this federal and state match capitalization is ultimately used to finance loans to municipality for water quality projects. Now, these loans are repaid by the municipalities with interest to the Clean Water SRF, and then those loan repayments are also used as a source of repayment and security for the sale of Clean Water SRF revenue bonds. Those bond proceeds, combined with our federal state capitalization collectively, provides that below market financing for water quality projects throughout the state. And as a side, the Clean Water SRF, through federal capitalization grant authority, can provide principal forgiveness or grants instead of loans, primarily to small disadvantaged communities. Next slide, please. Now, this table here represents the history of leveraging in the Clean Water SRF and DWSRF program, beginning in 2002 when the board authorized the first sale. That sale was later refunded in 2012, but it wasn't until 2016 where demand for Clean Water SRF financing was surpassing available lending capacity. It wasn't until 2016 that the board really began routine leveraging of the Clean Water SRF and in part the DWSRF under a long-term funding strategy. Next slide, please. So here today, we want to talk about the 2016 bonds sold 10 years ago. Now, these bonds sold 10 years ago, it was about $410 million in par amount. That's the principal amount to be repaid under a bond sale. There was $91 million in premium amount for a total of around $502 million in proceeds. They were sold in the spring of 2016 with a final maturity of October 1st, 2035. Now, this series of bonds helped finance 32 Clean Water SRF projects, and as of today, there's an outstanding principal amount of approximately $158 million. And what's key is that these bonds, now 10 years old in their repayment, are callable as of April 1st, 2026. Next slide, please. So what does calling or redeeming bonds mean? So as the slide states, we can redeem or pay off bond debt before the scheduled maturity date without paying premium. Effectively, it's like refinancing your mortgage. And we can use a combination of available eligible cash or the sale of refunding bonds or a combination of both in the redeeming of SRF bonds. Next slide, please. Now, what are refunding bonds? Refunding bonds, they are new bond obligations ultimately issued to retire or refinance previously issued higher interest rate bonds. Refunding bonds can close within 90 days of a call date. Again, April 1st is our first eligible date to call the 2016 bonds. And refunding bonds may also be sold for other reasons, such as removing restrictive covenants. Next slide, please. Now, fortunately, the board in its foresight when it established the SRF debt management policy back in 2017 had the foresight to consider some policy direction on refunding bonds. And again, the SRF debt management policy was established as a holistic policy framework for the routine leveraging of the SRFs under a long-term funding strategy. But ultimately, the SRF debt management policy states that the refunding of outstanding SRF debt should be considered if it provides financial or resource benefits to the SRF programs that will allow the programs to finance additional projects. Next slide, please. Now, it also states that refunding should maximize net present value savings with a stated goal of at least 3% in net present value savings. And net present value savings is a comparison of the cost of the refunding bonds compared to the remaining cost of the original bonds being retired or refinanced in today's dollars after consideration of all costs of issuance. Next slide, please. Now, the State Water Board's financial advisor completed a refunding analysis about a month ago. And the analysis has found that market conditions are favorable for refunding the Series 2016 bonds. There's an estimated approximate 10% or approximately 16.3 million in net present value savings per an analysis back in January. And then this proposal does consider that the savings be redirected to new clean water SRF financings under the Water Board's long-term funding strategy. Now, I do want to caveat, these are estimated savings. The true savings wouldn't be known until time of sale based upon the market conditions at that time. Next slide, please. So up on the presentation is a proposed structure. Some key highlights: the max par amount, which is the principal amount to be repaid under a bond series, is approximately $158 million. That is the outstanding balance of the 2016 bonds. Again, we have the net present value savings greater than 3% per policy, and an all-in true interest cost rate of 2.36%. The final maturity would have the same maturity date as the 2016 bonds. And like all of our other prior bonds, they would be secured against the SRF pledge pool derived from SRF loan repayments. And of course, we have our additional debt test and no debt service reserve. I do want to caveat, it is the max par amount that's being proposed. It will likely be less than that. We do have to consider available cash as part of this redemption to ensure compliance with certain tax-exempt rules. Next slide, please. So also under this proposal and will help transact this sale are certain documents. So we have the preliminary official statement. Okay, this is a document that describes the proposed sale and discloses all information that a reasonable investor would consider important in deciding whether or not to purchase our bonds. We have a continuing disclosure agreement, which is a contract requiring the State Water Board to provide ongoing annual financial reporting and updates to material events for bondholders to assess and surveil our program. We have the notice of sale. Now, this is a document that the State Water Board and iBank would use to solicit bids from prospective underwriters for a competitive sale of bonds. And then we have the Series 26 indenture, which is a closing document that authorizes this particular issuance. Next slide, please. This lists out the team that would facilitate this transaction, and they've participated in recent years' transactions. Of course, we have the State Water Board, which is the obligor for the SRF bonds, also conducts a loan origination, servicing, surveillance, and compliance reporting. We have the iBank, which acts as issuer on behalf of the State Water Board. We have the State Treasurer's Office, which is the trustee, agent for sale, dissemination agent, and paying agent of our bonds. And then we have some consultants. We have Hawkins, Delafield, and Wood, which acts as tax and bond counsel. And then we have Hilltop Securities, which acts as our financial advisor. Next slide, please. And then finally, this is the proposed calendar to engage in this sale, coordinated amongst the Treasurer's Office's other sales that they have to participate in. Of course, today's board meeting next week, this same proposal will be considered by the iBank. We're aiming for competitive sale and bid opening March 5th and closing by March 19th, if not possibly earlier. And then next slide, please. And then with that, if there's any questions.
I don't necessarily think I have any questions, but just a lot of praise and thanks. I've certainly learned a lot since coming into this role about finance and the complex programs that we run here, and just very proud of the technical expertise we have to be able to do this, to maximize our funding, our investments, to ensure that we're getting the most out of every penny in investment here in the state. And I have to give a shout out to Ann Berger-Entriken as well, our financial advisor from Hilltop Securities. Just really appreciate, I know there's a real active world out there when it comes to how states are trying to grapple with financing water infrastructure. And I think we just have, as even Mr. Gore said this morning, a real opportunity to make sure that we continue to lean in on our expertise and figure out how we continue to maximize this huge need that we have out there, and importantly, the resource. So just thanks, a lot of praise and appreciation. Looking to fellow board colleagues if they have any comments or questions. Hearing none, we may be ready for a motion then.
I'll move to adopt item 2.
I'll second.
Thank you both. Ms. Tyler, can you please call a roll call vote?
Board Member McGuire?
Aye.
Board Member Firestone?
Aye.
Board Member Morgan?
Aye.
Vice Chair Diadamo?
Aye.
And Chair Esquivel?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you as well. And the vote is unanimous and the resolution is adopted. Thank you. Looking forward to hearing how the sales series goes. So thank you. All right. Again, item number 3, we will move to our next board meeting. And now we can move on to board member reports. Looking to fellow board colleagues, if they have anything off the bat, I will quickly try to pull up my calendar.
I have nothing to report.
Same here. I just attended, actually with Deputy Director Karkowski, a rural development summit in Bakersfield that brought together community development organizations, local communities, local leaders to talk about funding and how funding can support community investment and what's available. There were lots of really good questions. A lot of folks were interested in just understanding what types of things could get funded and how to navigate that. And I know that DFA is also sending somebody to a second one that's up in I think it's the Modesto area. So, and then there will be a tribal one as well, focused on tribal funding.
Fantastic. Really appreciate that, board member. My one item was on February 13th. I was at the Cal DSAL annual conference along with Chief Deputy Mogus. It was good to connect with the DSAL community again. I think now 4th year that I was able to attend the conference, and always good to iterate off of what is a lot of interest in the Ocean Plan Amendment and the work we're doing to continue to support DSAL within the state. So. Nothing, board member? Okay, well, great. Well, that brings us to the end of our board member reports then. We will be in recess until tomorrow, where we will then have closed session on sites. And DCP potentially, but I know for sure sites. And so we'll be in recess until tomorrow then. Our next board meeting is March 3rd. And so until then, everyone have a great 2 weeks. Be safe, be well. And we'll see you here on March 3rd. Thanks all.